Welcome to This Works Marketing, where 3 decades of proven experience has launched products, built brands, and generated profits. These are the stories behind the businesses that have been built. How's everybody doing? Thank you, everyone. Hey, my name is Ken Carey. I am a direct sales expert for the last 30 years, working with big companies, small companies, and Fortune 500 brands all over the world, generating over $6 billion in sales for our clients. And today I want to ask you a couple of questions that will set up your company for success in the future. And the reason I'm talking about these questions today is because I had a really interesting morning today. I was at a seminar a friend of mine runs, and he has some of the most successful real estate executives of companies and realtors from all over the world, actually. And he had this seminar today, and the speaker today was a gentleman by the name of Peter Diamandis. And if you don't know anything about Peter Diamandis or haven't read his books, his most recent book is called Bold. He was an extremely interesting guy, and he talked a lot about the world and as it's changing, and really kind of the demonetization of what technology is doing to literally industries. And as I was thinking about this and I was listening to what he had to say, I thought, I want to talk about this today, especially when it comes to brands, retail, and e-tailing in the online industry, because there is a demonetization, there is a change going on, and I think every brand knows it, every product manufacturer knows it, and the real question is, what are you going to do about it? So the two questions are this. Are you a brand that is wanting to build a direct-to-consumer model because you see the writing on the wall when it comes to retail and the controlling power of Amazon? That's the first question. And the second question is, are you a brand that has not yet made the move to a direct-to-consumer model, and you're not sure about how to get your message out, and you're unsure if you should be making the move? Well, if you've answered yes to either one of these questions, you're in the right place, because I want to address those. And I want to give you 5 reasons why, and 5 tips and I'll break them down into tips and tactics, but I want to give you 5 reasons why the time is now to start thinking about building a direct-to-consumer model in your business and what it can mean to you and your business, and the long-term profitability and success to your business. So, it's in addition to the issues we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you some practical and tactical advice based on what we've done with our clients and what I see being done out there in the business world. So I'm not just going to tell you what you need to do. I really want you to get some value out of this, to give you tactical and actionable things to do. So before we get into that, let me give you some insights that should help you realize how fast things are changing and how technology is demonetizing industries that we're all involved in, and especially how a product and a brand, how it's going to affect a product and a brand. So let's just take a little check back what's happened in the last 10 years. And this will kind of help you realize how technology is changing things and how it's going to affect brands and retail and what you do. Okay, so first example is, think about what Uber and Lyft has done to the taxi business. That technology that happened with Uber and Lyft has totally disrupted taxis and transportation. Everybody knows that, but it really was a technology that made that happen. Okay? Same thing with Amazon. Amazon, the technology of Amazon, has disrupted, there are no more bookstores. It's totally disrupting brick and mortar retail and how you're buying products of every category. That's undeniable, okay? And that's only going to continue to happen more and more. Think about Skype. That technology has totally changed and demonetized the long-distance carriers. I mean, there really isn't a long-distance carrier the way we knew them before, because Skype totally flipped that on its head because of technology. Google obviously with research libraries and anything you kind of do with research. Google has flipped that through technology. Craigslist has flipped it with classified ads. That's undeniable. Airbnb has totally demonetized hotel chains and changed that model 100%. And Netflix has done it with Blockbuster. And that technology has demonetized what we used to, rent movies and things like that when we go to the corner and rent those DVDs and get our entertainment. As a matter of fact, one of the things that Peter said in his presentation today, he said, actually, at 2 times, the owners of Netflix went to Blockbuster to be acquired, to see if Blockbuster would want to acquire Netflix. And Blockbuster turned them down. As a matter of fact, the CEO of Blockbuster at that time, and I think it was 2008 or 2002, something like that. But the CEO of Blockbuster actually said, Netflix and Redbox aren't even on our radar. We don't even consider them competition. So we all know what happened with that model. So why I bring that up today is because that's the demonetization of what's happening in industries, examples of it, and there are many, many more. And that's what's happening with technology and the way the consumer is getting their information to make decisions on buying decisions when it comes to brands and to products and services. For example, when we talk to a client today, and when we talk to brands and products that have products and have services, we talk to them really holistically about, our agency is built on television, but it's expanding rapidly in so many different ways and so many touch points that we can help our clients with, because we create a direct consumer relationship. We tell a story about a brand or a product. We can tell that journey about a product and how it fits into your life and how it solves the problems that you have and gives you the benefits of the benefits and validates with testimonials. And that kind of messaging is what we've been doing. But now we're taking that and we're putting it in an online and social media. We're doing it on television. We're doing it on radio. And we're especially in social media, how all that works together, because we all know that we consume our information in so many different ways. We might get a little bit on television, we might get a little bit on radio, we might get a little bit in social media, but how it all works together and the fact that you can tell the same story is becoming so much more powerful because technology is allowing us to do that. But what hasn't changed is how to take that consumer from a prospect to a customer. How do you grab their attention? How do you bring them in? How do you tell that story of your product so they're interested in it and they want to do something, they want to make a purchase, okay? That core isn't going to change, but the technology that we've been dealing with today and what I just explained is what's really allowing us to make that full service. That's really allowing us to make it much more beneficial. And the biggest thing about, in my opinion, the biggest thing about building a direct-to-consumer model for brands and for companies and for services is mindset. The mindset of, I need to do something, and to be all in. You have to be, when it comes to building a direct-to-consumer model, you have to be all in. Your team needs to be all in, your company needs to be all in, because it's a commitment. And I'm not saying that a direct-to-consumer is going to solve everything. What I'm saying is that technology is allowing us to connect with consumers in so many different ways, but that messaging you have control of. And that's really the gist of what I want to get into, and I want to talk about those 5 things. Have the mindset that a direct-to-consumer model is going to help you with sustainability of your business and profitability, and that is going to help you with the demonetization of what potentially could happen to your business, like I talked about those other examples, because we all know that the technology of Amazon is changing the retail business. We all know that that technology from that aspect is changing what's happening at brick and mortar. So that of what exactly is happening is what we need to pay attention to, and that's why that mindset is so important. If you have the mindset to create a direct-to-consumer model, you don't have to let that technology or that demonetization affect your business as dramatically as it can, like it has done with those other industries I'm talking about. They literally put them out of business. But you have to make that decision early on, because I say that it's just not a quick strike proposition. It's a foundation that has to be laid now to be successful and be sustainable in the future. And although you can make money in a direct-to-consumer business or a performance response model that we talk about, you can make money up front, and you could subsidize retail, and you can subsidize your dollars at retail, and you can make all that happen, so you don't have to be just spending money to hopefully something happens down the line. You could be spending money, building a foundation, getting some of that money back, but be so much better set up in the future that you won't be susceptible like these other industries are. One of the things that Peter was talking about, and I remember a question that came up in the audience, and she was asking about, what is technology going to do to the oil and gas industry? And his response was, well, it's going to crush it. It's not that there is a lack of oil and gas. There's not a lack of that. So that's not going to crush that industry. It's the fact that technology and electric cars and how we're, building on that technology every day, and how solar and electricity and gas and all that is becoming such more effective way for transportation, that is what's going to kill the gas industry. It's not that we're going to run out of oil. It's because technology is moving it forward. And if you think about it, that's exactly what's happening. Matter of fact, he also said something about in China, there were about 20 to 30 coal mills closed just last year, because the electricity, the electric car, is changing that dramatically. And as we all know, younger people that we know, they're using Ubers and Lyfts and those types of services, especially in those high-density population areas that they don't even own a car. So if you don't need a car and you're just using an Uber or a Lyft, which eventually will be unmanned vehicle, which will be electric, why do you need a car? And if you're not using a car, you're not buying a car, why do you need gas? So you can see how that affects oil and gas. The other example he was talking about was what other industry was it that was going to be affected? It was transportation. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was talking about transportation and how it's just going to be changing everything. Oh, what he was talking about is how we are going to build our communities, because transportation is going to be so accessible to everybody. How it's going to build a community, and how we're going to start building shopping malls, for example, and how we're going to be building, like I said, housing developments and communities. Because if you're not using a car, because you're using that transportation to get everywhere, there's not going to be need for parking structures at malls. There's not going to be need for parking structures in other places. And when you think about that, that's usually about 30 to 40% of the footprint of a shopping center. So if that is eliminated, you see how it changes that model dramatically. And then when they're building subdivisions and things of that nature in the future, you're not going to need a garage. You're not going to need a place to park a car. You're not going to need room on the streets to park a car, because no one's going to be using a car. Now, that's way out in advance, and I understand that. But the point is that That technology is changing that, and you can see how that's happening today. So I want you to think about, because those things are happening, and the examples I gave before, what is that going to do to retail? What is that going to do to brands and products and services? And how do you take care of that today? How do you build that foundation? And I use the analogy of the foundation is that, when they were building freeways back in the day, and as we still build freeways today, there's a foundation that was built in order for us to have all this access to, roads everywhere across the country. That foundation had to be built. Well, that's quickly changing. And we can't even build roads fast enough to supply the demand that is needed for the cars. Now, maybe in 20 years, I don't know when that's going to happen, but I think it's going to happen, because these kinds of technologies and companies like Virgin and Bell Helicopter and Uber and Google are all focusing their energies on transportation, how that's going to change it. And it changes the foundation of what we're living in today when we're building these freeways, which aren't even going to be needed in a few years. So that's a dramatic dramatization, if you will. But it is happening, and how fast that happens, we don't know. But what's happening right before our eyes in retail with brands is how the consumer has so much accessibility to how they want to buy products, and how that's affecting the brick and mortar, and how the squeeze of retail is really putting product manufacturers and brands right in the middle and squeezing them. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because we see that every day in our business, and I see that, and our team sees, and we talk to companies all over the country about how they're going to address this, because technology is changing that. But what doesn't change is how you communicate to that customer. The only change is that technology has given us so many ways to do it, but you have to tell the right story. So the first thing I want to talk about, and I talked about the 5 reasons, and I'm going to read a little bit because I want to make sure I get my points across so it helps you understand where I'm coming from, is that companies need to understand that a direct-to-consumer model, you become a vertical retailer. You become a vertical retailer being in a direct-to-consumer model. Now, really, what does that mean? A vertical retailer means that you have complete control of your message, you have complete control of your creative, you have complete control of your supply chain, and you are building a direct connection with your consumer. That's what being a vertical retailer is. And that gives you back the leverage, because now you can control everything. And that's exactly what building a direct-to-consumer model is guiding and using our expertise to help build that communication to your customer, so you have that relationship, not the e-tailer and not the brick and mortar. They don't have the relationship, because when they're selling your products, they're just selling your product. They're not building a relationship with your customer. It's up to you to build that relationship with your customer, and you do that through a direct-to-consumer model. So by being a vertical retailer, these are the things that will happen. You're going to save on the margins you would pay another retailer. You're going to save on the margins you would pay from another retailer. So brands that understand, and product manufacturers that understand, when you're selling into a retailer or into an e-tailer, you're doing it on a margin, and they're going to squeeze that margin more and more every day, because right now they have a leverage on your business. And if you want to reach your customer through e-tailing or through retail, they can control that, and they can start causing you to take less profitability, because they have either, if they're an Amazon, they have a lot of leverage, and if they're a retail, they're losing leverage. But they still have businesses to run. They still have leases and rents and employees and all those types of things, and those numbers don't change. Matter of fact, they get more expensive every year. But because they're getting less foot traffic in their stores, they're not selling as many products. When they don't sell as many products, you as the manufacturer, the brand, the product, you end up taking the hit and they end up squeezing you on your margins. And Amazon is literally the biggest, retail shelf in the world. So they have a lot of leverage because competition can put you behind the bullseye. They're gonna find the highest bidder for the product that wants to be on their shelves, and it may squeeze you out. So your way out is through that direct-to-consumer model. The second point is that you can save on the growing costs of keeping your products on the shelves at retail, and I think I just addressed that, but you save on that. You can control your inventory and your supply chain because you know how much you're selling. Therefore, you can control your inventory, and if you forecast by how much you spend to acquire those customers to sell those products, you can start forecasting your profitability. How valuable is that? And that's hard to do on these other channels. And you can learn by having communication with your customers. You can learn what your customer wants, and you can start building products and making products for your future business based on what your customers want today, just by having communication with them. When you have a direct-to-consumer model, you have the direct communication with your customer. Therefore, you have built trust with them because you're making a great product, you're delivering a great service, and you're delivering a great product. Therefore, they trust you. So you have that open communication to say things like, how could I make my product better? What would you like to see in the future? That type of information is only available through a direct-to-consumer model, and you can control that. Imagine start thinking about making products that only your customers want. It's not a guessing game anymore. So those are the kind of the hashes that go into that one topic of creating a direct-to-consumer model. Okay, so the next thing is a direct-to-consumer model is a growing trend. As a matter of fact, in the Economist magazine last year said 71%, let me get this, make sure, product manufacturers selling direct will grow by 71% over the next few years. And it's not because it's a trend. It's because building a direct-to-consumer model is absolutely crucial in today's hyper-competitive global marketplace. It's not like the cool thing to do. It's out of how you're going to grow your company. What are the other channels that we can do to connect to customers outside of retail and e-tailing? And having your own website or whatever, that direct-to-consumer business is growing more and more because companies are feeling the squeeze and need to figure it out, okay? And that is just going to happen more and more and more as we see this world change around us. I talked a little bit about this before, but this is number 3, and it's about competition. The growing competition is all grabbing and is thirsty for the consumer's attention. Now, when all this competition is out there, you have to do more and more to support your brand. You need to do more and more to separate yourself from the competition because there's competition everywhere. How are you going to cut through? How are you going to tell your story better? How are you going to create your features and benefits? How are you going to demonstrate your product? How are you going to tell that potential customer everything they need to know to buy your product and not your competitor's product? That's an interesting proposition. How are you going to do that? What are you going to do? Are you expert at doing that? If you're not, you need to seek out an expert who is an expert at doing that, and not just putting together that message, but helping you get it out to all the places where we as consumers are consuming our information. This is an interesting stat about competition because brands are now facing unprecedented competition. Here's something, this is not all about just products and services, but this is interesting. Consider that in 1980, there were approximately 6 brands of jeans in 1980. It's not that long ago. As of today, not including knockoffs, there's over 800 brands of jeans around the world. With 800 brands of jeans and that kind of competition, how are you going to cut through? How are you going to tell your story? And how are you going to make the customer, your potential customer, want to have your product and understand why yours is better than the other? And that's your story. That's the story you need to tell, and how you say that and how you get it to your customer. Interesting, this is another part when it comes to competition, is that assortments are growing. Think about this. In 1968, Pringles had one flavor of chip in 1968. Today, Pringles has 33 flavors. So it's not just competition, but it's assortments and breakdowns and channels within the competition. So it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the bigger and bigger it is, the more and more challenging it is to create separation. But with challenges is opportunity. So if all these challenges and all this competition is out there, the opportunity is to take that path of a direct-to-consumer model, develop it, build the foundation, so in 3, 4, 5 years from now, when brick and mortar world changes dramatically, e-tailing changes dramatically. We still don't even know what's going to happen with Walmart and Jet, and where is Wayfair, and where are all these other, and where is Alibaba? How do they all figure into this? And is Google making a play like that? I mean, there's just so many things we don't know, and we don't know how big that's going to be, but we do know it's going to affect us. So if that is on your radar, building a direct-to-consumer model is something you need to be doing. And I'm not saying at all ditch retail and ditch Amazon or e-tailing. Those are extremely important parts of your business today, but they are going to be diminished in the future because they're going to have the leverage on you, leverage to the point where it's going to affect your bottom line. And if you don't want it to affect your bottom line, you need to build that foundation today of a direct-to-consumer business so you can go direct to them, you can save on your margins, you can control your inventory, you can control your message, and you can build your community to people who love your products, and you don't need to worry about what's happening in these other areas, because they're going to take their direction. And are you going to be reacting later on down the line? Like it was too late for Blockbuster to react. Netflix already did the damage. They couldn't react, and therefore they don't exist. So those examples I talked about earlier are this just reality, and it's going to happen in the retail and the product, the brands. It's going to happen in that business more and more today. I mean, you could say that taxi services are adapting to having apps and things like that to get a taxi, which is great, but they reacted way too late. They're never going to overcome Uber and Lyft. I shouldn't say that. I don't want to say never, but it doesn't look good that they're going to overcome those things. So I only bring that up because reactionary too far down the line is too late. It's, one of the things that we do in a direct response campaign is when we create a campaign and it goes on air and people buy, and we're on social and we're on television and we're in all the areas that we need to be, when people buy and it's going really well, there's a sales bell curve that happens. Once that bell curve is at the top and you're reacting up here, it's almost too late to react to keep that sales height at that point. We always try to influence our clients is to make that change right about here before it gets up here. So if we're reacting well ahead of time. And that's what I'm saying to you right now. It's 2018. What's going to be happening in 2020? What's going to be happening in 2022 besides all the things that I talked about that are in the midst of technology changing? How is that going to affect your brand, the products you sell, the services you sell, and how are you going to change it? How are you going to take control of that? Now's the time to start thinking about that. And I'm just so happy that, the clients that we work with, the sophisticated marketers, the big brands, are seeing this happen. And I can say unequivocally and with a big smile in my face that there's 3 brands specifically that we're working with that are seeing this happen, and they're taking action now. And like I said, it's not a quick strike, and it's not the panacea. It is a new channel. It's creating new customers. It's bringing people into that funnel and having that direct-to-consumer model, because they're seeing what this is doing to their business today. As a matter of fact, confidentially, and I won't say who it is, but that has already been happening to this big brand for the last 2 years. So they're not waiting any longer. They're building this channel. They're building this foundation because they're going to be sustainable in the future. And that is going to be extremely, extremely valuable to the long-term profitability and sustainability to their company. So, so let's talk about number 4, and that's the benefits brands have by having a direct-to-consumer connection. I talked a little bit about it, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper here. So you can obviously strengthen your brand image because you control your message. No longer is a retailer or an e-tailer controlling your message, and you hope that you've given them enough information to do what you want them to do, to talk about your brand. And you know, that's just absolutely critical that you control your own message. You can aggregate an incredibly rich amount of consumer data by getting insights to your customers' needs and their buying behavior. Like I said, I talked a little bit about that. But if you can get that data that's telling you right in front of your face, what are their buying behaviors? What do they want in the future? What do they dislike? Now you can craft exactly the products and services you want to sell to your customers because they already told you that they want it, and you've got the data to prove it. So you have so much more leverage, and you can serve your customers so much better. And when you're serving them with great information, great products, they're going to buy from you, and they're going to continue to buy from you because you're creating good information and products. And why wouldn't you do that? Why would you go somewhere else if somebody keeps serving you better and better and better? There's no reason to go anywhere else because you just made that connection, you've made that relationship that is just invaluable, and it's extremely profitable as you build that customer relationship. The number 5, and of the 5 things I wanted to tell you about, was that, you know, when you have a direct-to-consumer model and you serve those customers, you do something that's amazing, and you build a brand advocate, okay? A brand advocate is what I consider that review-based economy. I call it the review-based economy, and we here at Script to Screen call it a review-based economy. But a brand advocate is extremely beneficial. One of the main reasons is because it is almost an advertising campaign that you're not paying for. If you are creating good products, good services, creating value, listening to what your customer wants, making the products that they want to continue to buy from you, you're creating advocacy. And when you're creating advocacy, they will do the advertising for you. It's not even a question that we make decisions more and more today based on the reviews and the feedback that people make online about a product or service. I mean, who doesn't look online about a review or something that's going on about a product? Good or bad, it influences your decision. Those advocates that have purchased a product are helping you make a decision, therefore helping the company that's making the product that they've been happy with. So building that brand advocate is what you're going to be able to do in a direct-to-consumer model. Now, obviously, product and service is number 1. You have to have a great product, and you have to serve that customer. And I think that goes without saying, and every brand and every service and every Fortune 500 brand or all brands, that's of course that's what they're going to do, and you're going to do that, and that's extremely important. But when you get those advocates, they're going to do a couple things for you. They're going to bring in their friends that are going to engage with you. They're going to tell their friend, and their friend's going to tell their friend. That's that virtual advertising campaign that I told you about. Is they're going to bring in people for you because you're going to say, this was a great product. It fit me well, or this really was a great product in my kitchen, or whatever it was. And you're going to tell a friend, and they're going to try it, and they're going to love it, and they're going to tell a friend, and that cost of getting that customer from the very first part, that acquisition, is just doubled and tripled. And who knows how many times that multiplied based on an online review. So that's that beautiful part of creating a direct-to-consumer relationship and creating a direct-to-consumer model, is that you're going to build brand advocates, and they're going to bring their friends. They're going to be so loyal that they're going to avoid the competition because you've done them a service, or you've provided a great product, or you listened to what they had to say. Why would they go to competition? Why would they go test out something that is proven as a relationship you built? So that has loyalty, and that's extremely valuable. Let's see. I talked about social proof, that the fact that the advocates will amplify your brand and your brand message, and when they amplify that, it becomes social proof, and it becomes that feeling of security that you want to buy a product, or you want to buy a service, or you want to do business with this company because there's a lot of people very happy with it, and that's that social proof that gets you to feel like I'm comfortable making that purchase. And when you make that purchase, you're in, because you're gonna continue to serve them. So the bottom line is this: is that the consumer is now in complete control of how they consume their information. The technology is demonetizing industries, and with that in mind, of the consumer having the choice of how they're going to consume their information, and the technology changing the retail business and the e-tailing business, and how that affects you as a brand or a product or a service, is absolutely critical. So when you build a direct-to-consumer model, again, you create your message, you tell and let that consumer know why your product is better, and you can demonstrate it, and you can tell that story fully. You can have that relationship with them, and you are not going to be susceptible to that technology demonetizing the industry that you're in, because you're creating your own funnel of customers. You will have retail, you will have e-tailing, but the faster that you start building a direct-to-consumer model, I am 100% confident that you are going to be set up in such a better place in a few years, when these either crumble or change, or we don't know what's going to happen, or this starts dominating the world, which is already starting to happen. You have control. And when you have control, you have the leverage. And when you have the leverage, you can really start serving your customer, and you're not relying on what they do. You can rely on what you do and what you do well, and making great product and making great services, and then having long-term profitability and sustainability to your business. So I hope this was informative to you. I'm just passionate about this topic because we do this every day with our clients, and in the performance response business that we're in, we're seeing it happen more and more with big brands, and we're having the privilege to work with them, to help them build these models, to help them be sustainable in the future. And if you take anything away from what I'm talking about today, think about those examples I talked about, and how technology is demonetizing those industries, and how it's starting to happen in the retail brand business, that now is the time to start taking action and start thinking about what you need to do. And if you don't know how to do it, there's experts that do it. And do that every day is something we've been doing for the last 30 years. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Ken Carey, direct sales expert for the last 30 years, and I hope this information about direct-to-consumer gives you something to think about, gives you something that you might want to talk about with the CEO of your company or the chief marketing officer or anybody in that aspect when it comes to customer acquisition, that you take this into consideration, start thinking about what you're going to be doing in the future. All right, thank you very much for joining me, and we will see you next time.
Welcome to This Works Marketing, where 3 decades of proven experience has launched products, built brands, and generated profits. These are the stories behind the businesses that have been built.